Someone once told me, men always cheat. Is that true? Or am I just overthinking? I never thought I would be the type of person to share my problems online, but here I am, pouring my heart out. Maybe it's because I'm desperate for answers, or maybe I just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy. I don't even know where to start from. My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 good years. Everything was going well in the beginning, but in the past few months, I have had this bad feeling that he is cheating on me. I don't have solid proof, but there are so many signs that I just cannot ignore. It started about 6 months ago. I first noticed it when he started becoming very secretive with his phone. He used to leave it lying around the house, but now he takes it everywhere with him, even to the bathroom. Before this unusual behavior, we shared everything, including our phone passwords. But all of a sudden, he seems like he is hiding something. He never lets his phone out of his sight, and he even changed his password without telling me. He always looks bothered if I try to take a look at his phone screen. I have noticed how he quickly swipes away message notifications from unknown numbers. I once asked to borrow his phone to check something online, because my phone was down. And he said something like, "Why do you need my phone all of a sudden? And why don't you use your own phone?" Those words surprised me, because it felt like he was hiding something. Sometimes, I would catch him sneakily looking at his phone whenever a notification popped up. He started taking his calls in another room, speaking in low whispers. When I asked who it was, he would brush me off with a carefree reply like, "Not someone important," or "just work stuff." It's driving me crazy. This might sound paranoid, but isn't it weird for a partner to suddenly become so possessive over their phone? I remember one evening clearly. We were watching a movie together, and his phone kept buzzing. He looked at it, frowned, and then quickly turned it face down on the table. When I asked who was texting him, he paused for a moment, before saying it was just a friend from work. But he didn't sound convincing. I noticed his voice was shaking, and his eyes avoided mine. There was also this strange incident with his email. We share a laptop, and one day I accidentally opened his email account instead of mine. I noticed a few messages from a woman I didn't recognize. They weren't too romantic, but the messages were many and way too friendly. When I asked him about her, he said she was just a colleague and that I was making something out of nothing. He then changed his email password, saying he needed to protect his work communications. One particularly disturbing incident happened last week. He was in the shower, and his phone buzzed with a text message. I took a look at it and saw the notification that said, "I cannot wait to see you again." My heart raced as I picked up the phone to check the message. But he had passworded it, so it was locked. When he came out, I asked him who had texted, and he snatched the phone out of my hand, saying it was just a spam message. Another night while we were together, he dozed off while we were watching a movie. His phone was unlocked, so I checked it. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I needed to know what was going on. To my surprise, there were no new messages. In fact, there were no messages at all. He had deleted everything. That was the moment my suspicions increased. I started suspecting him even more when I noticed changes in his social media behavior. He started following and interacting with a lot of new accounts, mostly attractive women who posted tempting pictures online. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying it was harmless and that I was just worrying too much. But it felt like a slap in the face. Why would he need to engage with these women if he had me? Out of nowhere, his work schedule changed drastically too. He used to come home at a regular time every day, but now I never know when to expect him. He started coming late from work almost every night for the past few months, which was something he never did before. At first, it was just once or twice a week, but then it became almost every night. It seemed reasonable to me initially. I tried to be understanding, but soon, it started happening every time. He would come home tired, and give unclear explanations about project deadlines and team meetings. He will tell me he has a work meeting, but he won't give me any details. When I ask who the meeting is with, or what it's about, he gets annoyed and tells me I am asking too many questions. He gets defensive, asking why I don't trust him. I get that jobs can be demanding, but there are no new projects or promotions he has told me of that could be keeping him that late at work. But it wasn't just the late nights. Lately, he has also started going out with friends that I've never heard of before. He used to tell me everything, who he was meeting, where they were going, but now, he has been more secretive about his social plans. He has developed some new friendships that he keeps very private. He mentions hanging out with people from work, but I've never met them or even heard their names before. All I get is, I went out with some friends, or I'm meeting a client for drinks. One time, I asked him to introduce me to these friends, and he got really defensive, saying I was being too clingy and that he needed his privacy. It's like he's creating a separate life that I'm not a part of. One night, I decided to confront him. I said to him, I feel like there's something you're not telling me. You're always on your phone, you're distant, and you've been working late so much. Is there someone else you've been seeing? But his response was, why would you ask me that kind of question? You're overreacting. There's no one else. His words were almost convincing. I wanted to believe him so badly, but my mind wouldn't let me. There were these unusual events that kept piling up. For example, there have been a few instances where his stories just don't add up. There was this day he told me he was going to be working late, only for me to find out from a friend that he was spotted in a different part of town. When I confronted him about it, he said that some of his colleagues invited him for a quick dinner at a restaurant, but he never mentioned it to me beforehand. I was very annoyed. Another time, I went out to buy foodstuffs when I saw his car drive by. I know his license plate by heart, so I'm sure it was him. But when I called to ask where he was, his phone was off. He didn't come home until very late that night. I asked him where he went, and he said he was at work the whole day. When I mentioned seeing his car, he got defensive and turned it around on me. He said I didn't trust him, and that I was spying on him. It felt like he was trying to make me feel guilty for something I didn't even do. Then there was the issue of money too. He used to be responsible with money, but recently, he has been spending more than usual, and I have no idea where it's going. When I ask, he gets defensive and says it's for work-related expenses. But the other day, I found a receipt for a fancy dinner for two. It was from a restaurant we had never visited together. When I asked him about it, he shrugged it off, claiming it was a business dinner. Another time, I found a woman's earring in his car. It was delicate, silver, and definitely not mine. When I confronted him, he claimed it belonged to his colleague, who had borrowed his car for an errand. The excuse was weak, but I didn't have the energy to argue. I was emotionally exhausted, constantly battling my suspicions and his denials. I was cleaning the living room one day when my necklace dropped between the seats. As I dug around to find it, I pulled out a rough piece of paper. It was a receipt from a clothing store, with a woman's name on it. I didn't recognize the name, and I knew it wasn't for me because he had not bought me clothes in ages. When I confronted him about it, he said it was a gift for his sister. But here's the thing, his sister lives in another state, and he had not previously told me about sending her anything. When I asked if he had a tracking number for the package, he got angry at me, and accused me of not believing him. The whole thing just didn't sit right with me. He swears he is not cheating, but how can I believe him when he keeps lying? I know what you're thinking. Why am I still with him? Why haven't I left? Trust me, I ask myself the same question every day. Part of it is that I still love him, despite everything. I keep hoping that I'm wrong, that all these signs are just coincidences and that we can go back to how things were. But the other part of me is scared. Scared of being alone, scared of starting over, and scared of what I might find if I dig too deep. I've tried talking to him about my feelings, but it always ends in a fight. He says I need to stop overthinking things. But how can I, when every fiber of my being is screaming that something is wrong? I feel like I'm going crazy, constantly second-guessing myself and trying to find logical explanations for everything. But my mind keeps telling me that something is seriously wrong. I've tried to ignore it, to push it down and focus on the good parts of our relationship, but it's becoming impossible. He used to be so loving, always finding little ways to show he cared. The little things that once made me feel loved, like random hugs, spontaneous kisses, playful touches, started to reduce. He used to bring me breakfast in bed, surprise me with gifts, and plan date nights. But now, all of that has stopped. He stopped making these thoughtful gestures. He seems distracted, and preoccupied with something he wouldn't share. He's distant, cold, and sometimes I sense he is irritated by my presence. It's like living with a stranger. The lively conversations we used to have about our future, our dreams, our plans, have reduced to almost nothing, replaced by unclear and uncertain responses. He has grown less interested in my family and friends. He used to be a big participant in my family events and was happy to socialize with my friends, but lately, he has become less excited about doing so. It felt like he was slowly detaching himself from my life. His behavior began to shift in other ways. He started having mood swings a lot of the time. One day, he would be sweet and loving, giving me hope that things were getting better. The next day, he would be cold and distant, leaving me confused and anxious. I was constantly trying to make sense of his mood swings and understand his behaviors. He used to be a pretty cool guy, but now he was getting easily angry all the time. He would get annoyed over little things, and speak harshly to me for no reason, then later apologize. When I asked him what was wrong, he would say something about stress from work. He seemed more relaxed when he wasn't around me, and that hurt me more than any of his harsh words. His behavior was also confusing me, and it took an effect on my confidence. I started to doubt myself, second-guessing every choice I made. It spread into every aspect of my life, and made me feel less sure of myself. His defensiveness made me question my own sanity. There were moments when I confronted him, and voiced my fears and suspicions. Each time, he dismissed my feelings, calling me overly sensitive and that I was overthinking. He would shift the blame to me, and say I was too controlling because I didn't respect his boundaries. He claimed I was trying to drive him away with my constant accusations. His words played on my mind, and I wondered if he was right. Was I really being unreasonable? Was I imagining things? I started to withdraw, fearing that any confrontation would lead to another explosive argument. A few weeks ago, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I followed him after he left for one of his late-night work sessions. I felt like a stalker, but I wanted to know what he was up to. He drove into an estate and parked in front of a house. He sat in the car for a few minutes, checking his phone, before getting out and heading inside the house. I didn't have the courage to follow him in, so I just sat there, anxious and waiting for him. He didn't come out for hours. When he finally did, he looked around nervously before getting back in his car and driving home. I confronted him as soon as he walked through the door, but he repeated the lie that he was working late. When I mentioned following him, he got angry and accused me of invading his privacy. It was the worst fight we've ever had, and it left me feeling more confused and alone than ever. The next morning, he started apologizing and tried to make amends by cooking breakfast and being extra attentive. He said he understood why I was unhappy and promised to be more open. But the damage was done. His promises felt empty because I couldn't shake off the image of him sneaking into that house. I keep replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Am I just worrying too much? Is this all in my head? Is he hiding something? I wish I had solid proof. The constant suspicion, the emotional manipulation, and the isolation are taking a toll on my mental health. I am experiencing anxiety, sleepless nights, and I feel very uncomfortable. I cannot eat, sleep, or focus on anything. The anxiety and depression are crippling, leaving me feeling like a shadow of my former self. I feel like I'm living in a constant state of doubt and anxiety. I cannot focus at work, I've lost weight from the stress, and I'm starting to isolate myself from friends because I'm embarrassed. I don't want to be that girl who doesn't trust her boyfriend, but I also don't want to be the fool who ignores all the signs. One particular argument stands out in my memory. It was late, and he had just come home from another so-called work event. I asked him how it went, as I tried to keep my voice friendly. But he reacted angrily and accused me of asking him too many questions. I was surprised. I told him how his behavior was making me feel bad, and how distant and secretive he had become. Instead of addressing my concerns, he turned it around on me, saying I was too demanding, that I was the one causing problems in our relationship. His words cut deep, and I remember going to bed that night, feeling more alone than ever. The isolation was the hardest part. I felt like I was all alone, and cut off from the person I loved. Our communication has gotten worse. We used to talk about everything, and share our thoughts and feelings openly. But now, getting him to talk about anything is hard. He used to involve me in his life, tell me stories about his day, and his colleagues. Now, he avoids the topic entirely. He appears irritated whenever I ask about his day. He gives me one-word answers and doesn't ask about mine. It feels like he's shutting me out, and it's heartbreaking. We used to share special moments, but now, it's like we're just two strangers living under the same roof. The more he pulled away, the more I felt myself sinking into hopelessness. I began to doubt myself, wondering if I was doing something wrong. I would ask myself, Am I too needy? And how am I pushing him away? The constant self-doubt makes me question everything I do. Every time I see him texting someone or coming home late, I feel worried. It's like I'm expecting something negative to happen next. I've talked to a few friends about it, and they all have different opinions. Some say I'm overthinking things and need to trust him, while others say I should listen to what my mind is trying to tell me. I want to believe him, but the signs are hard to ignore. I remember one night, we were supposed to have dinner together, but he called at the last minute, saying he had to work late again. I decided to surprise him by bringing dinner to his office. When I got there, the lights were off, and the building was empty. I called his phone, and it went straight to voicemail. He didn't come home until hours later, and when I asked him about it, he said there was no light at his office, and he had to finish his work at a nearby restaurant. It sounded reasonable, but why didn't he tell me earlier? I've tried to convince myself that I'm overthinking, that I'm reading too much into things. But every time I do, something else happens that sets off alarm bells. It's like a never-ending cycle of doubt and suspicion, and I don't know how much more I can take. I've noticed his reactions to my questions have become increasingly defensive. Every time I bring up anything related to his late nights, his phone, or his whereabouts, he immediately turns it around on me. He says things like, "You're the one who's acting suspicious," and "Why are you so obsessed with my phone?" It's like he is playing mind games with me. Sometimes, I feel like he is trying to manipulate me, and it's making me question my own mental well-being. I've also started noticing things around the house that don't add up when I'm not home. There are strange smells, perfume that isn't mine, and sometimes, the faint scent of cigarette smoke, even though neither of us smokes. I found strands of long hair on his clothes and in his car that definitely don't belong to me. When I show him these things I found, he always has a silly excuse. He says stuffs like, "I must have brushed against someone on the way," or "maybe it's from one of my coworkers." The other day, I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket. When I confronted him, he said it was from a work conference he attended a while ago and must have forgotten to throw it away. But I know his schedule, and there hasn't been any out-of-town conference recently. He was very annoyed when I pressed further, and accused me of not believing him. One night, after another argument, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of what he might be doing. I decided to drive to his workplace, hoping to catch him in a lie. When I arrived, his car wasn't there. I waited for over an hour, and he never showed up. My heart sank as I drove home, realizing that he had lied to me once again. I feel like I cannot speak freely around him, and I'm afraid to say anything that will annoy him. But at the same time, I cannot ignore the growing mountain of evidence that something isn't right. I've even considered talking to his friends or coworkers, trying to get a sense of what's really going on, but I'm worried that would backfire. If he found out, it would only make things worse. And what if they are going to cover up for him? I'm afraid of what they might say, and I don't want to drag other people into our mess. The thought of being embarrassed in front of people we know is almost too much to bear. It feels like a lose-lose situation. I remember one night we were supposed to go out with friends. I was getting ready when he came into the bathroom and said he wasn't feeling well. He said he had a headache. I offered to stay home with him, but he insisted I go without him. When I came back, he was gone. I called and texted, but he didn't respond for hours. When he finally did, he said he had gone for a drive to clear his head. But I found an empty wine bottle in the kitchen that someone had drank, and it didn't make any sense. I've tried to distract myself with work and hobbies, but my mind keeps drifting back to him and the growing list of suspicious behaviors. It's affecting my performance at work, and my colleagues have noticed that I have been keeping some things to myself. I don't know how much longer I can pretend that everything is fine. The most heartbreaking part is that I still love him. Despite everything, I hold on to the memories of how good things used to be. I keep hoping that this is all just a rough patch, that he'll come to his senses and things will go back to the way they were. But with each passing day, that hope fades a little more. One night, after another argument, I was crying in the bathroom. It felt like my world was falling apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. I thought about leaving him, and starting over somewhere new. But the idea of being alone terrifies me. I've invested so much in this relationship, and the thought of throwing it all away is too painful to bear. I've also noticed that he has started making plans without me. He'll say that he's going to a party or a social event, but he never invites me along. When I ask why, he says it's just a work thing or that he didn't think I would be interested. It feels like he's trying to create a separate life, one that doesn't include me. Last weekend, he told me he was going to a friend's birthday party. I decided to call that friend to see if he would mind if I tagged along, only to find out that there was no party. When I confronted him about it, he got angry and said that the party had been cancelled at the last minute. But his reaction didn't make sense. If the party was cancelled, why did he not tell me? Why did he still leave the house for hours? I'm starting to feel like an investigator in my own relationship, constantly on the lookout for clues and trying to piece together the truth. But this is not a mystery novel, it's my life, and it's falling apart. The other day, I found a strange lipstick stain on one of his shirts. It wasn't my shade of lipstick, and I had not worn lipstick in weeks. When I asked him about it, he said it must have come from a colleague at work who gave him a hug. But who hugs a coworker that closely? It felt like a silly excuse, but I didn't have the energy to argue. I've also noticed that he has been more secretive about his schedule. When I asked him about his upcoming plans, he wasn't clear enough. He just said he had some work trips and meetings but nothing serious. He didn't say much, and it's unlike him. It feels like he's deliberately keeping me in the dark. Right now, I feel like I'm living a double life, one where I'm trying to be the supportive girlfriend, and another where I'm playing detective, constantly searching for clues. It's exhausting, and I'm starting to feel like I'm losing myself in the process. I've thought about speaking to his family, but I'm not sure how they would react. They might think I'm overreacting or that I'm trying to stir up trouble. And if they confront him, it could make things even worse between us. But at the same time, I feel like I need someone else to see what I'm seeing, to confirm what I'm thinking, and tell me I'm not crazy. I keep asking myself if I'm just worrying too much, if all these incidents are just coincidences. But there are too many red flags to ignore. His secret lifestyle and his lies all point to something being seriously wrong. I'm scared of what I might find if I dig too deep. I have even started having nightmares about him cheating on me. I will wake up in a cold sweat with my heart beating fast, and it takes me a while to calm down. It's like my subconscious mind is screaming at me to pay attention, to stop ignoring the signs. But what if I'm wrong? What if all of this is just in my head, and I end up ruining our relationship over nothing? I feel like I'm at a crossroad. I cannot keep living like this, but I'm afraid of the other options. Should I confront him again and risk another explosive fight? Do I leave this relationship and start over? The thought of being alone scares me to death. I've thought about writing him a letter, laying out all my feelings and suspicions in a calm and reasonable way. Maybe if he sees how much this is affecting me, he will understand and be more open with me. But I'm afraid he will just see it as another attack and shut down even more. The worst part is that I still love him. Despite everything, I cannot just turn off my feelings. I miss the way things used to be, the way he used to look at me and make me feel like the most important person in the world. I keep hoping that this is all just a bad dream and that I will wake up to find everything back to normal. But deep down, I feel that things have changed, and I cannot ignore it any longer. I need to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I deserve to know if the person I have invested 3 years of my life with is being honest with me or if he is hiding something. I wish I had someone to talk to who could explain to me how to deal with this better. So here I am, pouring my heart out on the internet, hoping for some advice. How am I overthinking things? Is my mind trying to tell me something? How do I find out the truth without destroying everything in the process? All of these signs are driving me insane. I feel like I'm on the verge of a breakdown. I don't want to confront him without solid proof because I know he will just deny everything and make me feel like I am overreacting. But at the same time, I cannot shake this feeling that something is seriously wrong. I know I need to make a decision soon, for my own sanity if nothing else. But it feels like no matter what I choose, I am going to lose something, either the relationship I have invested so much in or my peace of mind. And I don't know which is worse. Thank you for listening to my story this far. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Have any of you been in a similar situation? I just need to know that someone else understands what I'm going through, because right now, I feel like I'm losing my mind, and I don't know what to do.